Welcome to the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt, the first Friday edition of the Morning Pitt, bringing to close our first week of doing these morning shows. These morning shows. It used to be a Monday morning show. We would do the weekend recap every Monday morning right here on Panther-Lair, the Panther-Lair.com YouTube page, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We would do it every Monday morning. Decided to expand it this week and start doing it every day, Monday through Friday. Seemed like it would be a fun thing to do here, just to bring you a little extra Pitt coverage on the daily basis and talk about whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports, either news or topics, whatever it is that we want to talk about, and give you a little morning briefing on Pitt sports and kind of give you 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, however long it takes each morning. Podcast form on Apple or Spotify, and also right here on the YouTube page, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can click the button right there to subscribe. You can also make sure you like this video. That's big for us as well. And really appreciate all the engagement and the comments and the likes and the subscriptions and all those things that people have been doing this week. It's been great to see. I can't thank you enough. We appreciate that very much. Wasn't sure how this would go, what kind of reaction we'd get. I thought people would be into it, but you never quite know. And it's been a great first week. I'm excited to keep doing this as we get through the football season, into the basketball season, into the spring and recruiting and all the way back around. We'll do this all year long. We'll do it all year long, Monday through Friday, right here on our YouTube channel. And as we come to the end of this week, we're coming to the end of training camp. It's the final week of training camp, the final day of the final week of training camp. And really, you could say yesterday was the final day. Today, they're going to have a rehearsal scrimmage, as Pat Narduzzi called it, about 35 plays. So not a lot going on there. No tackling. He said we're going to let the running backs run. So those guys are just going to go upfield, and they can run as much as they want. It's a cardio day for the running backs and maybe a few of the receivers. But for the most part, it's a rehearsal scrimmage today where they're just going to work on situations. What do you do after a touchdown? Who needs to mobilize and get ready to go in for the extra point? After the extra point, who needs to be ready to mobilize and go in for the kickoff? Who needs to be, how do we know to get the punt team? What do we say to get the return units together to get ready on the sidelines so they go in so you don't, have a delay of game or anything like that? Operations stuff. Little things like little details that you probably don't think about much from the sideline. I don't think about it much from the press box or the sideline. But they are little details that can make a difference. I mean, you need to have some organization. You've got 100+ players on the sideline, plus 10 assistant coaches, 1 head coach. Not all the coaches are on the sideline, but you got a bunch of support staff and administrative, all these different people around. And you got to have a pretty smooth process so you can keep it moving. You don't want to be out there rushing to get a field goal kickoff or an extra point kickoff or a punt because you were behind. You don't want to be rushing and not having your return units or your coverage units set because you were behind and you weren't organized on the sideline. And that's some of the stuff they're going to do today. I'm not sure if they're going. I think they're going to Acrisure Stadium to work on some of that. They should. I mean, that's what would make the most sense. But I think some of those things you can work on a little bit in the south side on the practice fields as well. But that's really all they're doing today. And then the kickoff luncheon, later here today on Friday. And that's kind of it. And then they dive into whatever their normal game week preparation would be. Obviously, it's a little bit unique because the game is on Thursday night, but I think they'll get started probably this weekend with what a normal game week would look like. Saturday is Monday, Sunday is Tuesday, and so on and so forth, to prepare for that season opener against West Virginia on Thursday night at Acrisure Stadium. So, in my mind, training camp ended yesterday. I think that was their last sort of real practice. And we were there in the south side and continuing to do what we've been doing all of August is, observing, watching, seeing what's going on, and then continuing to do what we've been doing all of this week, talking about what we've seen throughout training camp. And I've sort of been calling these position previews, but it'd be more appropriate to say that they're position reviews, as opposed to previews is probably what I would say they are. Because we're going back and looking at what we saw in training camp, the observations we made, and what we learned about these teams, about these players in these positions during training camp. When we've been working our way through, we had the quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers on one day. We had the tight ends and O-line on the next day. I think as it was Wednesday. Yesterday we had the defensive line. And now we're at the end of the week, and we got to kind of get the rest of these spots done. So we're going to talk about linebackers, we're going to talk about cornerbacks, and we're going to talk about safeties. The back seven of the defense, crucial positions, a lot of strength up front, pretty good strength on the back end, question marks in the middle. And so that's what we're going to talk about right here on the Morning Pitt today, reviewing the back seven of the defense, the linebackers and the secondary. And I'm going to start with the linebackers because this has been, I mean, even going back before training camp started, going back to spring camp, probably prior to spring camp, maybe the most interesting position group on the team to me has been the linebackers. It has been really interesting to watch this group come together because they lost 7 or 8 linebackers from the opening day roster last season, either to transfer or graduation. And there were some significant transfers. Wendell Davis going to Northwestern, Cam Bright going to Washington. These are guys who probably would have been starters this season. If those two guys are still in the roster, you probably have a starting lineup of, Wendell Davis in the middle and Cam Bright and Servassier Dennis on the 2 outside spots. But for their own reasons, both of those guys decided to transfer. And Wendell Davis, I think not coincidentally, left the team after the Miami game, a game where he had a pretty significant missed tackle and subsequently didn't play anymore the rest of the game. And I think there was some disagreement between him and the coaching staff about that. And then Cam Bright leaving the team after the Peach Bowl when he was seen pretty clearly fighting with teammates on the sidelines. And some of that comes with the heated passion of being within a game and competition, and some of it is sometimes you cross lines that can't be walked back. Nevertheless, that's all, I don't even know, we don't even need to go down that path because what we're here to talk about is the team that's going to be out there 6 days from now because we're inside of a week, less than a week until the season opener. And one of the most intriguing storylines dating back to January has been, what is this linebacker group going to look like? Davis and Bright are gone. John Patrician's gone. Phil Campbell is gone. Chase Pine is gone. I mean, that's 5 guys who played a lot for Pitt last season, and really the only returning experienced player, of significant experience is Servassier Dennis. Now, fortunately, that happens to be their best linebacker, and their most experienced linebacker, and a guy who's been really reliable for the last 2 seasons, and made a big impact the last 2 seasons. And there he is. We've got a picture of him already on the screen. It's perfect timing. But Servassier Dennis is back to be your starting middle linebacker this year. The question is, you've got to fill out around him. You've got to find those 2 outside linebackers, and then beyond that, the 3 guys that are going to play behind those starting 3. The coaches always talk about they want to find their 3 best linebackers, and they like to cross-train these guys and have them learn multiple positions specifically for that reason, so that they can find the 3 best overall players, not necessarily just the best middle linebacker, the best star linebacker, the best money linebacker. Then with the 3 best overall linebackers, and ideally you've got them cross-trained in such a way that you can put them out there regardless of sort of what spot they fit into. Servassier Dennis can play any of the 3 linebacker positions. Cam Bright was a guy who could play either outside spot. John Patrician moved around. A couple of these guys can play the money linebacker or the middle linebacker. A couple can play both outside spot. They like to have that versatility and that cross-training so that they really can find their 3 best. And as it stands right now, I was going to build up, tell a long story of how we got to this point from January to now and which players developed and here and there. But I mean, as it stands right now, I think coming out of training camp, your 3 starters, your 3 best linebackers are Servassier Dennis, Shane Simon, and Bengali Kamara. Now, Dennis, we talked about. He's your middle linebacker. Shane Simon, I think, is the guy who lines up at the money linebacker position. The money linebacker is the short side of the field. He's going to play to the boundary. Obviously, responsibilities against the run because it's a Pitt's defense and everybody has responsibilities against the run. And then blitzing a lot, and coming off the edge and doing that kind of thing, in addition to occasional, some coverage responsibilities. And then Kamara would be at the star. And Kamara, I'll go right to an individual here before we even break down the depth chart. Kamara is, for my money, one of the most interesting guys heading into the 2022 season. One of the guys with the highest ceiling, one of the, some of the biggest potential for this season, and the biggest potential not just to be good, not just to play well, not just to play a lot, not just to have a breakout season, but to be one of the biggest impact players on this defense. The thing you have to understand about Bengali Kamara, kid out of Ohio, came to Pitt, had a lot of offers, but some of the schools had kind of backed off. His ranking, he never really got into that 4-star territory, despite looking like he had a 4-star offer sheet and seeming like he was built like a 4-star, prospect. But the concern was, and I think Rivals analysts had this concern, analysts for other networks had this concern, and some college coaches had this concern, was that he either, it was a combination of not being big enough to play linebacker and not being fast enough to play safety. Maybe on the safety thing. Maybe he's not fast enough to play safety. I don't know. But he's now like 6'2", 6'3", 235 pounds. He's big enough to play linebacker, and he still runs really, really well. And he has emerged as one of the best linebackers on this team. As evidence, in the spring, he was the money linebacker, playing that boundary side of the field. But as they got through the spring and got into training camp, and they realized that Shane Simon might be one of their 3 best as well, they then shifted Kamara to the star linebacker, that wide side of the field side, where, again, you have responsibilities in the run game, because that's just part of the deal if you're going to play defense for this team, and some blitzing off the edge, but also working in coverage and kind of having to cover in space and operate in that sort of setting. But they trust Kamara, both in his physical abilities and his development and his mental understanding of the defense. They trust him enough that they said, and this is where the cross-training comes in, I think the coaches, Pat Narduzzi, Randy Bates, Ryan Manilak, realize our 3 best linebackers right now are Servassier Dennis, Shane Simon, and Bengali Kamara. So one of these guys, Kamara or Simon, has to move because they're both in the same position. They're both playing the money linebacker. And Kamara got the nod and moved to the star, and by all accounts has continued to do well. Pitt's first scrimmage, he was the star of the scrimmage. I pardon the pun because of the name of the position, but interceptions, sacks, plays all over the field. And I think that's what he's going to be this year. I think he's going to be a stat stuffer for Pitt this season on defense. And I think when you get to the end of the season, you're going to look at his stat line in the box score, and he's going to have excuse me, more than 50 tackles. He's going to have probably 6 to 8 tackles for loss. Let's go 7 to 9, or maybe even 7 to 10 tackles for loss, and 4 to 6 sacks. Multiple interceptions, multiple fumbles forced, probably 1 or 2 fumbles recovered. He's going to be that guy. One of the, there are varying degrees of ways I comment on Pitt or observe things about Pitt or offer commentary. I'll put things on the message board. I'll put things in articles. I'll put things in the 321 column. I'll say them on the podcast. And some things I'll just say in private conversation. And depending on which setting I'm in, I might say things that are more ridiculous or less ridiculous. Obviously, in the private conversation, things get to be the most ridiculous of all. And I said at one point, before that scrimmage that Bengali Kamara broke out in, before that first scrimmage, I said at one point to a couple people, I said, Bengali Kamara, this is my wild prediction for 2022, Bengali Kamara is going to score multiple defensive touchdowns this year. Now, that's probably ridiculous. It's highly unlikely. But I think he's got that kind of potential. And we've hyped guys up before. We've gotten excited about, the most improved player of the spring before, which Bengali Kamara was for the defense. And every now and then you kind of have to draw that back and just chill a little bit. You don't have to get over the top about some of these players. But I have not heard anyone, and I'm going to talk to a lot of people around Pitt, and usually there'll be someone who's like, well, we'll see. We'll see how he does. No one is pulling back the reins on the hype for Bengali Kamara. If anything, it's going the opposite direction. Everyone I talk to, coaches, players, people around the program, people who watch the team, they all say this kid is going to have a huge season. He's one of the guys I'm most excited to watch this year, because I think he's just going to be an impact player out there. I think you're going to watch number 11 and be like, he's the kind of guy you want to watch on every play. You wanted to watch Paris Ford on every play. Even though he didn't always do what he was supposed to do, the potential was there for something exciting to happen. And you prefer, ideally it would be something exciting in Pitt's favor, but every now and then it wasn't. But I think Kamara is going to be the kind of guy that you're going to want to keep an eye on all game, every game, because he's going to do something. He's going to make things happen. It's going to be exciting. And so he's one that I'm really interested in looking forward to. Maybe, probably my breakout player on defense is going to be Bengali Kamara. And I think by the end of the season, we're going to talk about him as one of the better linebackers in the ACC. I think he's got that kind of potential. And I think it's going to be exciting to watch. So that's your top three. Those are your top three linebackers. And if you consider where they were coming into January and going into spring camp, where they had one experienced player back in Travassier Dennis, and then a whole bunch of unknowns, to come out of training camp with those three guys and the coaches and everyone feeling as good as they do about those three guys, it's really encouraging. And I almost feel like that's a strong position for Pitt. Now, we need to see Shane Simon do it on a regular basis, playing full games. We need to see Bengali Kamara do it in games on a full game. We need to see those guys hold up and how they do when they're playing against other teams. But for now, I think everybody around Pitt feels pretty good about that trio. And then behind them, you've got, I think, some more. I think the depth has filled in nicely there. Solomon DeShields, star linebacker, learning both outside linebacker spots, really, was one of the other sort of highlights of spring camp. DeShields and Kamara both had big springs. DeShields maybe didn't progress quite at the rate Kamara did, but I think he's got big play potential written all over him, and I think he's going to make some plays this year. When we talk about this two deep, when we talk about the backup linebackers, those guys are going to be on the field a lot. Those guys are going to play a lot. They're going to rotate a lot and get in a lot of snaps. It's not just going to be the top three. Those three behind him are going to play a whole lot. And so you're going to see DeShields on the field. You're going to see, Brandon George out there when he's able to get out there. You're going to see Tyler Wiltz, the transfer from Missouri State, get out there and get on the field. I think you're going to see different combinations. I think you'll see Shane Simon work some at middle linebacker. I think you'll see Travassier Dennis play outside. Kamara's got the ability to play either one of the outside spots. The guys are going to move around and work in different combinations. They ideally keep fresh legs through a rotation. But I think they've got a real chance to be athletic and make plays and be stout against the run, get into the backfield, and do well in coverage. So it's turned, linebacker I think has turned from a question mark into a pretty exciting position. All right, I almost wanted to do a whole episode just on the linebackers. I really did, because I think that position is just really interesting. I think the storylines and the players there are all really, really interesting. And I almost wanted to just do an episode on them, but we're at the end of the week. I said this was going to be a Monday through Friday thing, this Morning Pitt show. And so I didn't want to extend it in the weekend. And I don't want to have the first Monday of the season is our defensive backs review episode. So let's just jump into the DBs. I think it's a little less interesting, only because they've got three starters back. And at the one spot where they don't have a starter returning, they have two guys who played 400 snaps each last season. So at corner, you've obviously got Marquez Williams coming back, and you need to replace Damari Mathis. And to replace Mathis, they have A.J. Woods and M.J. Devonshire. And those guys each played more than 400 snaps in 2021 with Damari Mathis there. And that speaks to a couple of things. One, it speaks to the experience that Woods and Devonshire have and should position them to play well this season. But it also speaks to how much the coaches like to rotate, how they like to keep the corners fresh. And, Damari Mathis played probably, if not the most snaps of any player on defense last year. He was second most behind like Eric Hallett. He played a ton. He played like 700 snaps. But there were still enough snaps to go around for Woods and Devonshire to each to top 400. And Marquez Williams, I think, played 500 and some. So those guys all have a ton of experience. And I think as veteran players now, I think Woods is a senior this season. Devonshire, I think, is a redshirt junior. These guys have played a lot. They're talented. They're fast. I think they're going to do a good job out there. They're going to get beat sometimes. Marquez Williams is going to get beat sometimes. A.J. Woods is going to get beat sometimes. M.J. Devonshire is going to get beat sometimes. This is part of it. It's part of playing in this defense. But I also think those guys are talented enough and experienced enough, and there's enough depth there that they should be okay. They do need to find one more. Rashad Battle seems like the most likely candidate. Javonte Royal is in the mix. I said Javonte Williams because my fantasy football is on the brain right now. Rylan Gandy, the true freshman, is in the mix. They need a fourth corner who can step in there and play in a rotation. But even if they give the bulk of the snaps to Williams, Woods, and Devonshire, I think it's a pretty good combination. And they'll get guys, they'll keep them fresh, and they'll have good players out there. At safety, I think they've got maybe kind of low-key the most reliable tandem on the team. You know what I mean? It might be the most reliable, solid position on the team at safety with Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill. These guys have started, I think Hallett started the last 18 games. Hill has started the last 15, or has started 15 out of the last 18, something like that. They played a ton, and they played a ton together. And that's so important at those two safety positions, that there's continuity, that those guys know each other well, that they're able to play together well, that they know, the joke when we talked to those guys was that they could just sort of give each other a look, a little side eye, and they know what they're thinking. They're seeing the same things, they're reacting the same way, they know what they're looking at. And having veteran experienced players with continuity at those two safety spots in this defense is huge, huge. And that's why, I think we don't talk about Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett all that much because there's not a lot to say other than just those guys are really solid. And we've seen them make plays. Brandon Hill in his first career start, that Florida State game in 2020, made plays. I think he had a game-high 8 tackles, forced a fumble and an interception. And Eric Hallett, of course, had the huge plays in the ACC championship game. So, those guys are as solid as they come. The depth behind them is a little more interesting. Judson Tallendier is the backup to Brandon Hill at the strong safety position. I think he's solid. I think he'll be ready to go this year as a fifth-year senior. I think he's going to be able to contribute and be ready to really kind of step in when his number is called, which maybe they'll rotate a little bit more. But if something happens to Hill, I think Tallendier will be ready to get on the field. And then I guess P.J. O'Brien is the backup field safety. We'll kind of see what happens there. I'm not really sure. I think he's the backup, but there's a few other guys who might be in the mix, so we'll kind of see how they, how the coaches decide to go with it. But, the back seven overall, we talked so much yesterday about the defensive line. I think the back seven overall, linebackers have gone from a question mark to a position that's really intriguing and looks pretty strong and pretty solid. And then the secondary is just a bunch of guys who have played a lot and for positions where the strength of this coaching staff's recruiting, which we've talked about for so long about how good they were at recruiting defensive backs, the strength of this staff's recruiting has really shown through and created a very deep position group, at both spots, at corner and safety. So I think overall Pitt's in pretty good shape at linebacker and defensive back. They're going to get beat sometimes. It's going to happen. That's part of this defense. They're going to get beat in certain ways. Certain types of offenses are going to take advantage of them. They're so geared up to stop the run. They're running, play action to some extent, but RPOs even more so can really wreak havoc. And they've made different adjustments over the years, sometimes in the course of a season, and other times, they've just gotten beat by it. It's going to happen at different points this year, but I think the net performance, I think the performance of the linebackers and the DBs is going to be a net positive on the season. I think those guys, I think there's a lot of athleticism, there's speed, and I think there's a lot of playmaking ability. It's an exciting group. It's an exciting group heading into the season. All right, I think that will do it for us here on today's Morning Pitt. Make sure you like the video. We really appreciate that. Subscribe Subscribe button's right down there. Click that subscribe button. You'll never miss any of the videos that we release. The new Morning Pitt every Monday through Friday, every morning. We also have our Wednesday night live stream, the Panther-Lair show, where you can join, get in the chat screen and post comments and questions. We're actually doing it on Tuesday night next week at 8:30, just to get a little space between the show and the game on Thursday night. But if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you get a notification when we go live, so you always know when we're having a live Panther-Lair show. So, subscribe to our channel. You'll get the Morning Pitt every morning. You'll also know when we go live for the Panther-Lair show, the weekly show, or the post-game shows that we're going to do. I think we might go live after the West Virginia game. I'm going to have to tape a Morning Pitt anyway, right? I'm going to have to tape something to put out on Friday morning. So, instead of just recording it, why not get crazy with it? Let's get weird and go live at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever time it is that I get home from Acrisure Stadium. We'll just have a live show, and we'll see which of you weirdos are still awake at like 1:30 in the morning. I think it'll be fun. And if nothing else, no one tunes in. It's just me sitting here by myself doing the Morning Pitt show just like I always do. So I end up doing the same thing no matter what. It'd be fun if you join me. So mark your calendars. for 1:30 in the morning after the West Virginia game. We'll be live for that. But mostly subscribe to a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And message boards, where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Thanks so much for tuning in this week to the Morning Pitt. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I appreciate all of your engagement, the likes on the videos, the comments. All that stuff is fun. Let's keep it going. We'll bust into next week on Monday morning with a new Morning Pitt. But until then, thanks again. I really do appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday morning.